Good afternoon, members, and welcome to this Pensions Sub and Pensions Board joint meeting of Tuesday, 22nd of September at 2 p.m. First item on the agenda is settlement apologies and Chair's approval of members' remote participation for Pensions Subcommittee. So have we got any apologies from the Pensions Subcommittee?
Thanks, Chair. We've got 6 members present from the Pensions Sub. We've got 3 participating through Teams, and I've got apologies from Councillor Scobie.
Thanks very much. The next item on the agenda is settlement apologies and Chair's approval of members' remote participation from the Pensions Board. Have we got any apologies?
We have got 2 members present from the board, unless David, you and Phil are sharing the same computer again. That will give us 3. I've got apologies from Jan Andrews and Richard Brodie. And just to let the committee know that the Pensions Board have just nominated a new chairman, which is David Stainthorpe.
Thank you very much, and congratulations, David, on becoming the board chair. Are we quoted then for this to go forward? Yep, okay. Are there any declarations of interest for the Pensions Subcommittee? I don't see any. Are there any declarations of interest for the Pensions Board? Well, I can't see any. Okay. We'll then go on to item 5, members. This is the report by the external audit on the 2019-20 audit of Dumfries Galloway Pensions Fund, and the reports by Head of Finance and Procurement. This report provides members with an update from Grant Thornton, the Pensions Fund external auditors, on their audit of the 2019-20 financial statements. The final audited version of the accounts and letter of representations are appended to the report for members to approve. And we have John Boyd and Joanna Brown from Grant Thornton is available to provide an overview of the report and take any questions members may have. John or Joanna, have you got anything to add to the report?
Thanks, Chair. If I could just provide a brief overview of the key messages. So the report itself is concluding on our 1920 external audit, and I'd obviously like to thank officers for all their support during the audit and helping us conclude our audit within the time frame we had agreed pre-COVID, and we received a good set of unaudited accounts. The audit itself was done remotely, and it is an unmodified opinion, although we have got an emphasis of matter in the opinion just to draw to attention the valuation of property investments and the risks arising around material uncertainty due to COVID. That's something that's iterated within the pension fund accounts themselves. And our audit concludes on the significant audit risks we identified around management risk of override, the risk of fraud within revenue expenditure, and the additional risk that we brought in that wasn't included within the original plan, which was around the financial statement risks arising as a result of COVID-19. The report itself sets out a number of areas, and concluding on obviously our materiality levels, our findings around those areas of risk, and some wider commentary on the pension fund itself. But I'm happy to assume that the report's been read by the committee members, and myself and John are happy to pick up any questions.
Okay, thank you. John, have you got anything to add? I'll take that as a no.
Sorry, Chair. Nothing really to add to that. You'll see included within the report is an identified risk around COVID-19, just reflecting that we've updated our audit plan in response to that risk and the conclusions from the work.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? Nothing in the room. Anything online? No. Adam?
Cheers, Archie. Just it's not really to do with financial year 1920 as such. On page 19, it mentions obviously the governance arrangements that were put in place by the council during the COVID lockdown in particular, and it states that urgent business was obviously considered by the ad hoc COVID-19 subcommittee. To the best of my recollection, there was no business that would ordinarily go to this committee considered by the ad hoc COVID-19 subcommittee, so I'd be grateful if we can just get a assurances that there was no urgent business that was required to be considered, and therefore that that there's nothing that would normally come to committee hasn't actually came to committee.
Paul, do you want to come in now?
Yeah, no, thanks, Chair. No, I can provide that assurance that there were no decisions or urgent items requiring consideration by the committee during the period leading up to today's meeting. However, Karen did send out a full briefing to all members in the summer to keep members of the committee aware of the main developments in relation to the pension fund, and obviously that feeds into the next item on the agenda. We'll provide an update on each of those issues as well.
Okay, thank you. Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's just, I think we've got the line, I think it's on page, let me find it. It was actually on page 20 of 132, there's a couple of things in there which just outline how we go about making sure we do the right thing. So it does talk a little bit there about the regulations 2010 regarding local government pension scheme management and investment funds, etc., and about how the pension fund and we as the pension fund subcommittee would have to take proper advice about investments that we make through professional support, etc. So I think it's good now that I think we're getting that clarity and the recognition just about the case about the well-documented case about the £3 million, which did happen, and there's a note further along in the actual report which touches on that about changing governance arrangements, recognising that because as pension fund members we didn't get advice about that investment prior to it. So so I think it's good that that's captured in here, but I think it's a learning point for us all, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Do you want a response on that?
No, I was just actually trying to find the page. It's page 21 there, so it does actually acknowledge the £3 million, and while interest was paid, etc., it does actually then go on to say this is the changes we'll need to make as a result of that.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other members? In which case, if there are none, we'll go to the recommendations. As members were asked to 2.1 receive the external audit report, which we've done. 2.2 note that no issues have been identified in the course of this audit which have impacted on the fairness of the financial statement submitted for audit as detailed in paragraph 3.1. 2.3 approve the letter of representation to be certified by Head of Finance and Procurement appended to the audit report as detailed in Appendix 2. 2.4 approve the audit accounts which will be certified by the Head of Finance and Procurement, Grant Thornton, after this meeting as detailed in Appendix 3. And 2.5, note that the certified accounts will be made available to all members before the 31st of October when they will be available on the Council's website. We're happy to agree on them. Thank you. We'll then move on to item number 6. Thanks, John and Joanne, for doing that. Item 6 is the Pension Fund Update and Emerging Issues Report by this paper provides an update to members on the implementation of the investment strategy as well as a number of current and emerging issues relevant to the pension fund. This report updates members on all of the issues covered in the briefing that was sent to all committee and board members in June due to the committee being stood down due to COVID-19. And Karen is here to answer any questions members may have. And you've got anything to add to this, Paul? Karen?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you, Chair. Do you want me to kind of give a brief overview of the key issues, or happy just to go to questions?
Yeah, please just give a brief overview.
Yeah. So, okay, as the Chair mentioned, this brings members up to date with everything that was included in the briefing I circulated in June, just bringing it sort of bang up to date. With regards to the investment strategy, obviously the implementation of the revised investment strategy is complete as it can be at present. Obviously the kind of key ongoing issue is the investment into the BlackRock Strategic Alternative Income Fund. So we've got £6.8 million transferred to that fund to date from our £70 million commitment, and I'm pleased to report that we actually, further to the reports being published, a further 1.8 million was transferred today, with indications that there will be a further drawdown within the next 2 or 3 weeks. So that's certainly starting to sort of move ahead now. And obviously, as we've previously reported,
the increased investment in property is still on hold, and I'm assuming, like, given the current uncertainty in the property market, I think it's probably worthwhile keeping that on hold for the time being. Obviously, other kind of key issues, COVID-19 obviously has had a significant impact on the fund, and we had significant downward sort of valuation at the end of March. However, that has the June results are showing a lot more positive, and we've managed to recoup a lot of those losses already. And obviously, the performance will be covered in a bit more detail later on in the agenda. Sort of just coming on to the sort of key sort of issues that are impacting the fund at the moment. Obviously, the actuarial valuation is ongoing at the moment to value the fund as at the 31st of March 2020. Officers have passed all the information to Hymans Robertson, and the plan will be to bring the draft results to the December meeting of the committee and board, and also get Hymans to go through the sort of the valuation process, just because obviously we've got a number of new members on the committee and board, so just so there's a wider understanding of how they go about that valuation. Next one would be the sort of MacLeod case. Obviously there was a further development of that back in June, where they've now published a proposed remedy. So from that, it actually means that the estimated liability of the fund is actually dropped from 6 million to 2 million, which is positive news. So hopefully that case is coming to a close now. And then obviously I've touched on the UK's exit from the European Union. There's not a huge amount to update you on there, but obviously we're keeping an eye on that, and there's like potential uncertainty still there, but obviously we'll keep reviewing that. And finally, just the structure review. Again, there's not been a huge amount of progress on that. The Scheme Advisory Board haven't met for a while, and the latest update is that they're still wanting to further assess the merit of all 4 options that were put forward, and they're are in discussions with the Scottish Government about procuring additional work on the merit of all the 4 options. So I appreciate that was a very kind of brief run through, so happy to take any further questions.
Okay, members, questions? Let's see. Adam?
Cheers, Archie. Finance know that I'm a big fan of numbers, and I know that a lot in this report is more the qualitative stuff. But there is a lack of numbers and sort of what the impact on some of these issues could be, and I appreciate that we don't have a glass ball to look into. But has there been some modelling done to look at actually what the impact could be on some of the more extreme sort of predictions that are being made about, Brexit and COVID and the impact on the stock market?
Karen?
Yeah, I'm sure at a previous committee, Paul Potter and his team put forward the potential impacts of the exit from the European Union on the fund. I mean, if it's something that members would find useful, we could maybe revisit that and the impact of COVID. Obviously, as you say, we've not got a crystal ball that there could be a sort of swing positively or negatively on the markets. I'm not sure if Paul's got anything further to add to that, or whether you want to pick it up later on.
Paul, you want to add that?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that now if people can see me and hear me. We did do some modelling as part of setting the investment strategy. When we do that modelling, we do include a very wide range of very extreme outcomes. We don't necessarily know what might cause some of those very extreme outcomes in advance, but they do test very sharp falls in equity markets and very prolonged periods of very low growth. So the kind of environment that we might be going through is kind of within that funnel when we're looking at the downside risk. I mean, I think the risks arising from Brexit are probably potentially less severe than the risks associated with the kind of the COVID spread, because you have a very globally invested portfolio, and what we've said on Brexit in the past is that you have global equities. The move will probably come in the currency, and in the past, currency weakness has boosted the value of your overseas assets. You are at risk in terms of the UK domestic economy within the property portfolio, and some of the investments in the BlackRock Income Fund are obviously in the UK. But I think the potential adverse scenarios from how we emerge from the kind of the virus situation would have a bigger impact, because potentially they're impacting on your global spread of investments, and so that is a bigger risk, and that's obviously did prompt a bigger fall in assets in the first quarter, albeit that's recovered. But we do look at some fairly extreme scenarios when we set out the modelling and looked at the downside. It's something that we can go back to and look at, when the current actuarial valuation's over. And just to say that as part of the actuarial valuation, they will be modelling potential outcomes in terms of contribution and investment strategy as well. So I wouldn't like to predict what would happen, but we test some very extreme outcomes when we do that modelling to set the strategy.
Adam, are you happy with that? We're just taking action to look at that in the future?
No, I'm happy with that, and I do reiterate. Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball, and obviously anything could happen. But I think it would be quite useful to, as things progress. I appreciate there has been some modelling done, particularly on Brexit, to the committee previously. Although, of course, we have moved on in time since that point, and the situation has changed in many ways. Although uncertainty is obviously still there. So I think I'm not necessarily expecting to see it now, but if we can take that as an action, then that would be good.
Okay, thanks, and we'll do that. We'll take that as an action. Jim McComb.
Thanks, Chair. Aaron, is there any indication of the liability associated with GMP equalisation?
Karen?
I have to admit, I don't have that to hand. It would probably be something I would need to liaise with the admin team on, but certainly I can look into that for you and come back.
Presumably there is a liability.
Yes, there will be. I mean, I think to an extent it'll already be built into the liabilities that are included within the sort of accounts and the fund's liability. But I have to admit, I don't know what that liability is off the top of my head. But I mean, it will already be included in our liability figures. I just don't know the exact figure for that particular issue.
I take it you could get it, so
Yeah, leave that one with me. I'll come back to you.
Thank you.
Are you okay with that, Jim?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, thanks very much. Are there any other members? John Campbell?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's 3.3, the investment strategy. I know this is due early 2021, and any suggested amendments will be brought forward. I'm just wondering, in the investment strategy that we are contemplating climate change, what kind of investments are we going to be putting in? If it's true what they say that we've got until 45 or 2050, whatever's going to come first, I don't know. Just to be aware that we need to be investing in climate emergency sort of portfolio type things.
Thanks, John. I think obviously we have a Dumfries Galloway Council strategy on climate change, and obviously that included looking at the pension fund as well. I must say that when I went to Edinburgh last year for the updates from some of the people that we've got investing our money, that they are looking at, you know, renewables and all sorts of different things on climate change. But Karen, can you clarify that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's becoming an increasing profile across all funds, and it's, I suppose, something that all fund managers are taking into account. I mean, potentially we might need to sort of review the investment strategy following the valuation. So it's maybe something that we could look into, if that's something members are keen to see, some sort of renewable investment opportunities. But I would suggest that we maybe look at that in the rounds with any potential amendments required to the investment strategy following the valuation, if members were in agreement with that.
Okay, we'll come to that when we come to the recommendations. Are there any other members? Okay, we'll go to the recommendations then. Members were asked to note 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. And obviously we'll have an action looking at the investment strategy moving forward with regards to the renewable side of that. Okay. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 7, then is the annual training plan and record of training update. This is a standing item on the agenda with an update on the training plan. There has been no training event since the last committee due to the COVID-19 restrictions. The report highlights 2 upcoming training events that are normally held in Edinburgh, however, for this year have been moved to a webinar format, which should make it easier for members to attend. Members are encouraged to attend these webinars and should let Ross know of their availability to attend. New members are also reminded of the requirement to complete the pensions regulator training, and I will now open to the floor to any questions or comments members may have, unless, Ross, you've got anything to add to that.
Thanks, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me. Just to give you an update, I have had replies from 9 members of the committee and the board for the committee and member board training, which is going to be held on the 1st and 8th of October. Names need to be finalised by tomorrow, so if there are any members outstanding, can they please let me know? And then that's all I've got as an update just now.
Okay, thanks very much. Members, any questions, comments? No, in which case we'll go to the recommendations then. We are asked to note 2.1 and note 2.2. Okay. Item number 8 is any other business. I don't have any other business, but before we move into private session, we have to consider adoption of the resolution to exclude the public from the meeting in terms of section 50A4 and paragraph 6 of part 1 of the schedule 7A of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. We're happy to do so, and while we are, we'll allow the IT people here to do